Take a look at this map. It shows the decline of India's biggest internal security threat, Naxalism. This has not come easy. It has cost thousands of lives of security forces, political leaders, and innocent tribals who were nothing but collateral damage to these forces determined to break India. My language seems a bit harsh. Wait till I explain the whole story. These people deserve no sympathy, for they have targeted the innocents and brainwashed some of our brightest youth into sympathizing with them. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has declared that Naxalism will be completely ended by 2026.
31 मार्च 2026 के पहले हम भारत को नक्सलवाद से मुक्त करा देंगे, ये मेरा विश्वास।
If that happens, it is a huge victory for the Indian people. Naxalism was once described as India's biggest internal security threat by former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. India's forests for decades now have become battlegrounds, a vicious contest that has consumed thousands of lives. More often than not, we come across narratives which support tribal rights, which are anti-development and ask for more autonomy. In a country where the leader of opposition can sarcastically claim to be fighting a battle against the Indian state, do we risk belittling the pain and sacrifice of simple denizens of these pristine forests, the men and women of armed forces, local volunteers, fearless reporters who risk their lives daily to uphold the unity and integrity of India and free the country of Naxal menace? Let us understand this last stage of this war on Maoism, an ideology that denies the sovereignty of the Democratic Republic of India. What initially began as a peasant rebellion in 1946 in present-day Telangana, left-wing extremism has evolved into an ideology that supports violence against the Indian state, its soldiers and its people. Naxal is a word derived from Naxalbari, a village in West Bengal where members of the Communist Party of India, Maoist, decided to wage a war against the Indian state and reject the democratic and liberal constitution of India. This was led by three men, Charu Majumdar, Jungle Santhal and Kanu Sanyal. They sought a violent revolution and their excuse was safeguarding the interests of tribals and other vulnerable populations. This was against national interests. Their activities were banned. But this was not just CPIM. Even other Naxal organizations like PLGA, People's Liberation Guerrilla Army, started the reign of terror using illegal, non-peaceful means inspired by Stalinistic bloody method. By the late 1970s, Naxalism started spreading across the country, especially in the southern states. Kondapalli Sitaramaiah established the People's War Group to introduce attacks against the Indian state with military efficiency. Soon, landlords were kidnapped and forced to apologize to villagers and they were asked to pay bribes. By the 1980s, the Odisha-Andhra Pradesh border became a sanctuary for these Naxals. Ambushing security forces became part of the strategy for these Naxals, and over years, hundreds and thousands of policemen and military personnel went on to lose their lives. As India entered into the 21st century, embracing technology and growth with open markets dominating the economic scene, there was a stark contrast in the jungles. The Maoist People's Liberation Guerrilla Army gave small arms to all its members. They stole these from government facilities and used them to attack prisons, to free prisoners and target anti-Maoist voices. After a point, they knew how to grab headlines. Whether it is the attack on the Sreda camp, the ambushes in Dantewada that took place in 2010 and 2023, or the attacks and bombings in Sukma as recently as 2017 and 2018, the Maoists were adopting new strategies constantly. Their ambitions grew stronger. They wanted to expand their presence from Pashupati in Nepal to Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh, and they would stop at nothing. At its peak, Naxalism infested 16 of the 28 Indian states. Today, they're confined to only some states. In 2021, India had 72 red districts. In just 3 years, the number reduced to 28. Among these, the most affected districts are limited to just 12, where active insurgency is present. The rest of them are districts of concern, but even those are slowly waning away. In 2022, India saw a 75% reduction in left-wing extremism-related deaths from 397 to 98. Between 2004 and 2022, 8,625 people lost their lives due to this in the affected areas. Between 2014 to 2023 alone, about 7,649 incidents took more than 2,000 lives. That's a huge number for such a short period, but it is definitely a reduction compared to the past. What these Maoists cleverly do is that they take advantage of this tri-junction, an area that borders 3 states, just used as an escape route if one state police start looking out work for them. For the longest time, this had become an issue, especially because coordination between different police divisions was not happening and the territory was very porous, meaning that the jungles provided an easy escape for these Naxals to start jumping from one territory to another. But there's a sigh of relief finally, because the government crackdown seems to be working for the last decade. India's Home Ministry statistics actually show a reduction in left-wing extremism incidents of what we used to face a decade ago. Civilian casualties and the deaths of security forces have reduced in numbers over the years. So finally, the government wants to put a nail in the coffin of what was once known as India's deadliest internal security issue. But there is a more honorable way of doing it. The state governments are encouraging the Maoists to give up arms, surrender, enroll themselves to be rehabilitated, and given the dignity of labor in whatever they want to do from now. Till people actually face social stigma, but things are slowly coming around. India facing trouble internally is a blessing in disguise for many of our neighboring countries with which we have a strategic competition. This includes obviously China and Pakistan. For decades, China has tried to influence these local groups and arm them to be able to turn around and fight against the Indian state and its people. There's obviously well-documented evidence to establish this, and not just another conspiracy theory. You can actually check all our links in the description below and you'll be able to find all the citations that we've done for this. But back to the story. China's Yunnan province has been an infamous hideout for many of these insurgent groups actively working against India's interests. India's former Home Minister P. Chidambaram once said that the funding to these Maoists came from national and international sources. These groups were buying arms from black markets in Nepal, Bangladesh and Myanmar. These Naxals usually loot innocent civilians and industrialists. They kidnap the rich and the powerful to extort money from them. And they have also been accused of acquiring illicit weapons and involved in drug trafficking to make money. It has surely become an industry of sorts for these people. Sure, some people joined the movement taking a moral high ground against the alleged atrocities committed by the security forces, but it is no longer about that. They use these vulnerable tribals as a shield to hide their agenda of creating a havoc against the Indian state. Till today, 3,110 civilians, 1,986 members of various security forces, and more than 2,700 Maoists have died as a result of this. Not only that, Naxals often use schools and Anganwadi centers as safe houses to hide from security forces and actively destroy critical infrastructure such as roads, bridges, telecom towers, which are installed by the government. They loot banks and businessmen to fill their treasury. A fact sheet in 2019 reported an annual loss to India of about $20 billion every year due to the Naxal menace. But they managed to, however, lure young idealist minds and proliferate their ideology among the well-educated youngsters. That's the front with which they operate to get a cover in the outside world. In political parlance, the problem of urban Naxals is as real as it gets. Of course, not everyone speaking against the establishment or criticizing a party or a politician deserves to be clubbed under this. That is absolutely wrong and unethical. But however, the Maoists have a developed machinery for disinformation through which they hire specially trained individuals to foment rebellion. Remember, rebellion and not dissent, by conjuring narratives of corporate exploitation and tribal displacement, for instance. In a manner of speaking, these are professional revolutionaries. They need an empathizing angle to cover up their insurgent ideology, and this provides a very convenient mask. This is not accidental. This is a part of a dedicated propaganda machine that seeks to forward a strategic game plan of a people's war to overthrow the democratically elected government of India and usher in the so-called new democratic revolution. What do we get to learn from all of this? That the root causes of tribal alienation, lack of infrastructure, reliance on subsistence agriculture, economic exploitation by middlemen, and an unregulated mining economy were once exploited by these Maoists to fuel the insurgency. Now, the Indian state is actively addressing these issues, ensuring that the tribal populations are no longer pawns in an ideological war, but participants in India's growth story.